Welcome to the Author Corner, our chance to meet the authors you'll want to read. I'm Stephanie, and I'm so excited today to be joined by author Harriet Cabelly. She's the author of Light Through Darkness, Miracles Along My Cancer Journey. Harriet, thanks so much for joining me.
Oh, it's great to be here, Stephanie.
Oh, I'm so delighted to have you. Love the outfit, and I know we're going to talk about it.
Purple.
Oh, yes, I know purple, especially Miracles Along My Cancer Journey. We're definitely going to talk about purple. But just to bring our listeners up to date, can you bring us back to your cancer journey so we can get to the miracles?
Okay, so that was out of the blue, as I know a lot of people's diagnoses are out of the blue.
Like you felt fine?
I had stomach stuff, but I've always had stomach stuff.
We all have stomach stuff.
Because that's my weak link.
Okay.
And some people get migraines, and I've always gotten stomach stuff. So I figured, okay, my typical stomach stuff acting up.
Right.
And that was 2022.
Okay.
Like this January 2022, February, and then March, I was really feeling lousy.
Okay. It just went off the rails?
It went off the rails because I'm an avid walker, and I
Okay.
go to Long Beach often to do the
Nice.
4.2-mile boardwalk.
Wow.
And I went that Sunday in March. It happened to be a warmer day, and I couldn't walk. And I said, oh my God, something is wrong. I'm so weak. Why am I so weak? And I hadn't been feeling great, but not like this.
Right.
3 days before, I was taking my dance lesson at Fred Astaire,
I love that.
learning the tango. And I have a video to show for it.
Oh my gosh.
So it's like, how can I not be able to walk?
So you're tangoing on
Thursday. And on Sunday, I can't walk 2 minutes on the boardwalk.
Oh my gosh.
So I was with my husband, Alan, and it's like, maybe I'm just totally dehydrated, but why would that be? So I sat on the bench, and I looked out at the water, and I just took it in because I love nature, and it's very soothing. And then we drove home, and then somehow I was talking, I think it was to my trainer, Mitch, on the phone, and he said, you know, you got to go to the emergency room. And Alan had also said, I said, I don't really want to. It's probably this or that. Anyway, make a long story short, I went to the emergency room in the city. And again,
So you must have known there was something bad if you went all the way to the city.
I went to the city because my son-in-law's uncle was head of gastro at Lenox Hill.
Gotcha. So you figured.
So I figured,
I get a free
and I spoke to him.
Gotcha.
I said, what do you think I should do? Should I just go to my local ER, or should I go there? He says, if it's anything, go there.
Okay.
So I went there, and I figured, I said, they said, why are you here in triage? I said, I think I'm just dehydrated. I'm so weak. Okay. Took a CAT scan, even though I didn't want a CAT scan. I said I was having stomach stuff. I didn't want one because I had one a year ago, and everything was fine. I had an endoscopy a few months ago. Everything was fine.
You were doing the tango on Thursday.
Right. I said, I don't want one. And then the ER doctor encouraged me. She said, just drink a little of it. We'd really just have to rule it out. Okay. Did the CAT scan. An hour goes by. 2 hours goes by. 3 hours goes by. You know the expression, no news is good news?
Right.
Well, here, no news was meaning bad news.
Yeah.
So I was getting really anxious and going to the bathroom with that stupid gown open in the back and trying to wait it out until this new ER doctor comes out, because it was the changing of the guard, so to speak. And she comes out, they were still wearing masks, and she says, I don't know you, and I'm so sorry to be a stranger telling you this, but you've got a large mass sitting on 3 organs.
Oh my God.
So I was, even saying it now, I was I was in total shock. My husband, Alan, the tears just start flowing, and I feel like a rock perched up with my back against this wall.
What a shock.
And it was like, all I could say to him is, if this is real, just put me in hospice. Because when they said on 3 organs, main organs, it was like pancreas and kidney. And,
oh my gosh.
And then they admitted me, and it was 11 o'clock at night.
Oh.
And he couldn't stay because it was still COVID.
Right.
So he had to drive home with the tears flowing. He needed eyeglasses with windshield wipers, you know. That hasn't been created yet. And they took me upstairs, and all I could say to myself was, this is it. And I was doing a mental review of my life in my head, in the dark, with my roommate snoring away, saying to myself, I'm not scared of dying, but I really just don't want to die yet.
Right.
Because I love living, and there's so much
I
love. And I was just doing the tango. So that's kind of initial story.
I mean, that sounds like the biggest shock. I mean, I would think that most people felt they weren't doing the tango. You know, like at least a slow decline. I don't know.
Right,
That's
right. But then that week, towards the end of the week, after some tests and biopsies, came out a better diagnosis. So 6 days later, when I got the real diagnosis, it ended up being non-Hodgkin's large B-cell lymphoma, which, according to the doctor, was a better cancer to have with a much better prognosis.
Okay, good.
So
good.
he said to me, if you have to have a cancer, this is one of the better ones.
Oh, there's ranges.
I guess so. And that's the start of the journey.
And I could say to our viewers, well, we know how the story ends because fortunately she's sitting here with
Right.
me. So,
with my hair back and curls and all.
So thankfully, you know, spoiler alert,
Right.
she's here with me now. Thank God. Thank God. How long before you were, from that moment until I guess you were in remission?
Well, then once I started treatment, which was only a couple of weeks later,
Right.
was 5 months
Okay.
of treatment. 6 cycles, took about 5 months. And thank God, as one of the miracles states, I was really on target. They never had to put off a treatment.
Right,
You know how
right.
so many times from the chemo, and it's pretty heavy-duty chemo, and then I had lumbar punctures each cycle, which was
I mean, you can get an
not
infection,
pleasant.
you can get a cold.
Tons of stuff, tons
right.
and tons of stuff could go where, or your white blood count is just too low, and
Right.
and you can't get your chemo. And it was all on time. It all went, as my oncologist said, in the best case scenario, 6 cycles should take 4.5 to 5 months. I
Okay.
said, yeah, well, that's best case. What is it usually?
Right,
She says,
right.
well, we won't go to what the usually is. Let's go with the best case.
Right, right. And you got
And thank
that.
God it was. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's
and it was
amazing.
through the summer. So it was spring and summer.
Okay.
So that was a
And
good
here
thing,
you
too.
are, and you look fantastic,
Thank you.
for which I am so, so grateful. So
you.
tell me a little bit about you besides cancer survivor, because that's going to bring us to the book. What did you do before this all happened? What were you
Besides
doing?
dancing?
Besides the tango. I mean, if you did the tango 7 nights a week, I'm sorry.
No. It was on my bucket list to start taking ballroom dancing lessons. So,
Love that.
so I had started in February.
Okay.
Like a month before I was diagnosed.
Where were you taking them?
Fred Astaire Dance Studios in Garden City.
Very nice.
So I started in February, and then I got sick in March. I'm a therapist, so I work with people going through grief and loss of all kinds, or challenges, critical life situations, ironically enough, right? Before I was only in private practice, I worked in the New York City school system as an early childhood social worker. And before that, I was a special ed teacher.
Look at you. There's a whole life. So one would think, hope, that mentally, emotionally, you had tools at your disposal for dealing with this that many of us don't necessarily have when you were in this situation.
Yes.
But it's
and-
nothing like being your own situation, is it?
No. And I will say that my good friend Eve reminded me when I, at the very beginning, said, you know, just use what you teach and discuss with your clients.
Right.
Start to incorporate some of that and hold on to some of that mindset and the tools, you know, the mindset and the practical tools. And that was like eye-opening for me because, you know, when you become the patient, all bets are off. I mean, you're not going into like, well, what do I need to learn? What do I need to do? You just like, you become a sick patient suddenly.
Yeah, no, I get that. You know, you're somebody who's a therapist working with people and dealing with challenging situations. And when you're the one in the challenging situation, you forget all those things that you've told people on how to deal with the challenging situation.
Right. So when she said that, it clicked in. And the main first thing that clicked in, I love Dr. Viktor Frankl's work. Viktor Frankl survived many of the concentration camps. He's a renowned psychiatrist from Vienna. And he formulated the therapy called logotherapy, which is the therapy of meaning and purpose. And one of his main tenets, I mean, he's got a lot, is it's never about, and I'm paraphrasing, I'm not quoting it perfectly. It's not about the circumstance or situation that you're in. It's about how you respond to the circumstance that you're in. And that became my my main concept that I held on to from the beginning. It's like, okay, we're a victim of circumstance. We didn't ask for cancer. So you're a victim of the actual circumstance, but you don't have to maintain a victimhood mentality. You can choose how you're going to respond. And that could make all the difference in the world. And that's a lot of, and it's not a lot, it's a basic foundation of his work is choice and how we respond and what's in our control, what's in our purview of control that we could exert some power over and feel enabled.
And he was in a concentration camp.
Many, yes.
You know, just
Yes.
for him to be able to choose his response to circumstance in those kinds of circumstances.
Right, in the most adverse scenarios.
Right.
And I just think it's such an important distinction to make between victim and victimhood. We are, you know, when bad things happen to us, we are a victim of those circumstances. Someone, God forbid, has a car accident. You know, there was a drunken driver and you're the victim of it. Or an illness that comes upon you. But it's how we respond that shows, do we maintain that victimhood? Oh, I can't help it. Look what happened to me. Or do we say, yeah, this happened to me, but I can still choose how I'm going to respond. Look at Nelson Mandela sitting in prison for all those years, right? But he chose how he was going to respond. And therein lies the power. And therein lies how we can create our life.
Right.
And to me, that's a very powerful lesson.
So tell me about you being in the hospital, having treatments, and your friend, you know, had this light bulb moment with you about looking at yourself through the eyes of a therapist.
Right.
You know, and you started looking at, you know, Viktor Frankl and what would he do in this situation, kind of a thing. Tell me how that altered the course of what came next for you.
Okay, so in the you know, the basic thing being, okay, now how am I gonna respond to this? This is horrible. It's a total shock. Now how am I gonna respond, and how am I gonna deal? So the idea of looking ahead and trying to think, am I really gonna survive chemo? I'm so scared that I'm thin and I'm small, and what if I lose all this weight? And what if I die because my body can't handle all the chemo? And then when I started like that, I said, okay, so 1 second. I know better than that. There are a lot of ideas in the world of anxiety and how we can quell it, and what are some of the antidotes to anxiety? Because what is anxiety? Anxiety is fear of the future. And here I was ruminating and spiraling into fear of the future.
Right.
How am I going to handle 6 rounds? Am I going to make it? So there's a concept of, well, I don't know if it's a concept or it's an exercise where you put a stop sign, a mental stop sign up in your head, and you visualize so that every time you start to spiral into the next round and the next round and the next round, meaning for me, I would literally look at that red stop sign, like your red shirt, and say, no, I can't go there.
Right.
I have to be here. I have to take 1 day at a time, 1 week at a time, 1 cycle at a time.
Okay.
And that became my mantra. 1 day, 1 week, 1 cycle. I'm not going to be on round 2 and think about, am I going to still be alive at round 5?
Right.
Because I won't make it with that type of anxiety. So it was the idea of being very present, but very intentional about working on how I can be present, how I can maintain this mindfulness, really. Just be very mindful of, just be here today. If I feel good this afternoon, I'm going to go water my plants. I'm going to go outside and go see my flowers. I'm not going to think about later, am I going to be too exhausted? I'm going to, right now, I feel pretty good. I have a little energy. I'm going to do something else that brings me joy. And that was another huge thing, bringing in pieces of joy in terms of coping.
I love that.
Very important.
I love what you said about being intentional about it, so that you made these decisions.
Yes.
I never thought of a statement you just made, anxiety being the fear of the future.
Right.
I never thought about it like that. But I think that you're so right. And especially, you know, the fear of all of those things that could possibly happen, you know, the 25 possibilities.
Right.
And you're just spiraling because, I mean, yes, any of those could happen.
Right, but why worry in advance?
Right.
First of all, it's the old thing of when you worry in advance, you lose your present. You know, even in the best of times, forget about when there's something bad going on. How many of us are worriers? You worry. 90% of the time what you worry about doesn't happen anyways.
Right.
And then you're so focused on the worrying, which is future oriented, you're losing your present.
That's so true.
So that's really that's a crux of the concept of mindfulness, is really just being present.
Right.
So I worked hard at trying to be present because I knew how terrified I was of the what ifs down the road. So I tried to work against that.
Right. I get
Again, and it's being intentional about it.
Yeah, I get that. And I hear you that we worry so much and we spend so much effort and time worried about what if, that you're not right here.
You're not right here, and a lot of those what ifs usually don't happen.
Right.
It's the other things that you didn't think about.
Well, yes. Well, that's like, you know, someone who every time they get onto an airplane and they are convinced, you know, and they're just so anxious and they need to take a pill or whatever. And, you know, fortunately, you know, there's so many safety, that's not statistically going to happen, but they're just caught up in that.
Right.
Or somebody who every time they get into a relationship, they doom it because
self-sabotage. Absolutely.
You know, rather than be in that moment. That's amazing. That must have been a big switch for you. I could see you. You're in the hospital. You're getting this news. It's out of left field, and you can't help yourself but to become a bundle of anxiety,
which is fine.
Which is completely human.
Right, and normal, and we have to allow ourselves to feel. We're human, so we have to, my positive psychology professor used to say, permission to feel. Give ourselves permission to feel. Don't push those feelings away.
Okay.
And he gives a great like analogy where he'll say, just think of a pipeline. All of our feelings run through the same pipeline. If we push out the negative, or squelch them, or push them down because we don't want to feel them, or numb them, we're also taking away the positives.
Right.
All the good stuff. And our humanness comes with a palette of emotions, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So why shouldn't we feel them? I mean, our society doesn't like us feeling the bad stuff, so we prone to taking pills and all that.
Right. So how can you get from feeling everything and just being this anxious bundle to giving yourself permission to feel, but living in the moment with intentionality? How does somebody...
Well, it's recognizing it, acknowledging that you're feeling it instead of pushing it away, saying, yes, I'm scared to death. I'm really worried that I'm not going to make it. And I said that, and I said that to my friends, and I said that to my husband. I said, my biggest fear is that I'm going to lose so much weight that my body will just fold and crumble. That was a realist. I lost 20 pounds.
Wow.
And for me, that's a heck of a lot.
Yes.
But I just kept saying to myself that I am entitled to feeling anxious. It's normal to feel scared and terrified.
Right.
And I'm going to work on just trying very hard to be present and do one cycle at a time so that I don't spiral into terror of the future.
Yeah, one step.
One step. I remember saying one cycle at a time, one cycle at a time. Oh, I got through this one. Good. I'd cross off 4 more to go. 3 more to go.
So tell me about the purple.
Oh, the purple. The purple's always been my favorite color since I'm 16.
How 16 and you suddenly got into purple? Was it
Yeah,
like a
that
favorite
I can't.
Star, or remember?
I don't have any recollection of how I got into purple.
Or was it just your 16-year-old self and you thought you had to get it? You had to pick a color?
I don't know, but I had my purple velvet bedspread and my purple shag carpeting. That every time my contact lens fell out of my eye into the shag carpeting, that was it. I lost that one. And that's how I remember it was such thick, rich purple shag carpet.
Oh my gosh. littered with contact lenses. Oh my gosh. That's
So
a little terrifying.
that's the first recollection of the love and the first feeling I have of loving purple. I don't know how I came to it though. I just know that I said to my mother, I want purple. I love purple. She said, okay, do your room the way you want. And since then,
yes,
I've never tired of it because it has so many great shades.
Is your entire house purple? Is your husband ready to move?
Oh, he likes purple too.
Thank goodness.
Not the entire house. The upstairs now became a soothing blue like the ocean.
Okay.
But a good part of it, my front door is purple. I have a loaning library, you know, the free little library.
Oh, yes.
I have a purple box. I painted my mailbox. A lot is purple.
Wow.
And my mother's couch of 100 years old, I redid in vibrant, rich purple, kind of like this. But not my whole house.
But you're right, it comes in shades. You know, it's a
Yes.
funny thing about purple. If you did your whole house in blue in different shades, nobody would bat an eyelash.
Right.
But purple, they absolutely would question and say, it's a lot of purple.
I know, because it's either, I don't know, I think people have a love-hate relationship. You either love it or it's like, no, this is not my color.
I'm loving looking at you with all that purple, which is going to spin us into miracles along my cancer journey. So when you wrote this, you didn't just write, and this day I got diagnosed, and treatment 1 and treatment 2 and treatment 3. Tell me about seeing things as miracles, because that sounds like such a choice.
Yes.
To see things as miracles.
So that also was an intentional choice, to try to look at things. You could either say silver linings or
coincidence.
Yeah, but more than coincidence. Well, at least, if I had to get sick, at least it's not in the dead of winter. At least it was when the weather was starting to get warmer. So my visitors, my friends and family could visit me on the deck. I could go outside. Otherwise, who wants to be sick in the winter and you're cooped in? So I had a lot of the at leasts.
Gotcha.
When I was brought up to my room at Columbia, where I was eventually treated, not in the first hospital when I went to the ER, it was a horrible experience in the ER. For about almost 24 hours.
Oh my gosh.
And when I was finally brought up to my room, there was a purple wall and there was a view of the Hudson.
Oh, wow.
And it was like, holy moly.
So you knew.
I said, what a reward. I said to Alan, this is a reward for this horror show in the ER. Look what I got. And I truly was excited. And I laughed and I said to the nurses, I said, look at this. This is like a reward. Did they know I was coming? Was my name on the door? Not to sound like narcissistic. Other walls are purple, but it's like,
but it's
funny.
A great way to notice things. You know, other people after 24 hours in the waiting room, in the ER, wherever it was, would get upstairs and wouldn't even notice the colors of the walls. They'd still just be annoyed. And hey, I get annoyance at ER, believe me. But rather than you saw it as that terrible situation downstairs in the ER is over. I am now in my reward room. Here it is, my personal oasis and providential, whatever. Here it is. It's a miracle.
Yeah.
And other people would have missed that miracle.
Right. So you have to be open to receiving or, like you say, noticing, to the point where I even had the nurse move my bed over to the window so that I could have a better view of the Hudson for the sunsets.
Oh, the Hudson for the sunsets. Oh my gosh, that must have been
gorgeous.
amazing.
So we laughed and she pushed the bed over and it was like my little haven. So yeah, if I had to be there, make it pretty.
Right. But as I said, other people would still be so upset over what was going on. And believe me, emergency room is never fun, but would miss it.
Right.
The beautiful sun could be setting right outside their window and they would miss it. They would miss it. Right. What are some of the other miracles you talked about? The purple, I knew we had to talk about.
The vomit miracle.
The vomit miracle. Vomit and miracle have never once been in the same sentence on this show.
It's an oxymoron, right? That was the first thing I said when my beautiful oncologist walked into my room, in that purple room.
In that purple room.
Which I was subsequently transferred to because that was really a room for stem cell.
Gotcha.
What do you call it? Stem cell?
Stem cell transplants?
Transplants,
gotcha.
Yes. But that was what was available at the time.
Hey.
So she walks in like out of Vogue magazine, dressed like this is heels and beautiful
gosh.
dress, no white coat, and she introduces herself, and it was just like,
Wow.
whoa, this is amazing.
Like a TV show.
Yeah, really. So I embarrassingly said to her, and I was embarrassed, but I said, I have to tell you something. You're going to think I'm nuts, but can I tell you what scares me the most out of now being diagnosed with cancer? And she said, what? I said, having my head be in the toilet all the time and throwing up. I've seen too many of those movies.
Right, right.
And I am terrified of that. And to begin with, I don't like throwing up. Not that anybody does.
Anybody does.
Who does?
Right, but I must admit, if I were diagnosed with cancer, I don't know that
that would be the first
that would be
thing
the first thing I think about it. So I get you. I get you.
I said, and I was embarrassed, and I said, I'm so scared of that. So she had a little chuckle, and she said to me, you're going to have a lot of medication to ward it off if you take it always ahead of time.
Okay.
Prophylactically, like you don't wait to be nauseous and then take it because it'll be too late.
Gotcha.
And I listened to her like it was a law.
Yeah.
And you know what? And that's the miracle without belaboring that.
Wow.
That was the miracle. I never once vomited.
6 treatments and no vomit. That alone is such a great thing for our viewers to hear, because I think everybody thinks cancer treatment,
I know.
vomit.
And you know, it was funny also, it brought to mind one of the episodes in Jerry Seinfeld, because he had an episode, I don't remember what number, but we talked about the idea that, gee, it's been 10 years and 4 months and 6 days since the last time I threw up. He had a segment like that where he said that. It was the funniest thing. So that came to my mind.
Do you know your date too?
No. I don't know the date, but I know where I was.
Oh, do you really?
That was the last time.
Oh my gosh. Gosh, are you lucky that you vomit so infrequently? Good for you. So no wild Friday nights for you.
No. Anyway, but that's like an example.
No,
but then I had 10 miracles the way I perceived them, and I
love
always
that.
qualify and say the way I perceive them to be.
But that's what it's about. It's about seeing them and perceiving them, and that's what I loved when I read this. That these weren't miracles like, somebody held a hand over you and your tumor shrunk to nothing. No, these are everyday miracles, but many of us miss them. And that's so important for people to realize that the miracle of the vomit and the miracle of the purple room, these are absolute miracles. So that's what I absolutely adore here and want, all of our viewers to share. For all of us, Light Through Darkness, Miracles Along My Cancer Journey by Harriet Cabelly. You'll definitely want to read some. Thanks for joining us.
We're just books up on a shelf. Try to understand this if you can.